Me and the missus have been hitched for 8 years now, both of us being 36. Our anniversary just passed a couple weeks back, making the whole situation even more dire. But the bottom line is, we ain't got no kids. I've always been into TV and movies, maybe not the most thrilling hobby, but it's what I enjoy. The wife, well, she doesn't really have any other big interests. I used to be into video games, but that faded as I got older. Now here's the kicker, there's a show we both kinda like that's on TV, and I don't want to spoil it for ya. Man, this show is blowing up, it's about to start its 4th season and everyone's loving it. There's this one actor on there that always catches my wife's eye, which can get pretty annoying. I've dealt with women who are all about these hot celebs before, and it gets old real quick. They could be right there in the same room as you and they'll start drooling over them. But if you did the same thing with a supermodel, they'd give you the silent treatment for days. Double standard much? Anyway, let's just call this actor No One so I don't have to hear about him anymore. Don't spill the beans too much, I'm just trying to stay out of trouble. He's not exactly a household name, if you catch my drift. If you've seen the show we're talking about, you'll definitely recognize his face. Most folks haven't seen him in anything else, so he's definitely not on the same level as big shots like William Dafoe or Leonardo DiCaprio. It's hard to even call him a B-lister, since his claim to fame is just that one TV show. Yeah, he's been in a few other movies and shows, but none of them really made a splash. Hey kid, I think I have every right to say that, so yeah, I'm gonna label him as a SE-lister. It's not because I'm mad at what happened later, let me tell you about a convo I had with my wife back in the fall. She saw this guy on TV and started going on about how good-looking he is, how ripped his body is, how sexy his voice is, and all that. Then out of nowhere, she says she wants him to be her hall pass. I was so confused by this, so I asked her to explain what a hall pass meant. I think it only makes sense in a high school setting, you know. I'm sure most of you know what a hall pass is, right? But for those who don't, it's like a dumb term for the one person you're allowed to sleep with in a relationship without it being considered cheating. When she said this, I rolled my eyes and told her how dumb she was for even bringing it up. It turned into a big argument that night, but before I went to bed, I realized it was pretty much impossible for. I couldn't believe she wanted to sleep with someone else. It wasn't just about sex, it was the lack of respect that really bothered me. I mean, if you're that attracted to someone, fine, but telling your husband about it is just nuts. I was so mad for days, I even thought about saying Megan Hardy was my free pass in front of her. But then I realized that would be immature. So instead, I decided to be mature and told her how offended I was by her comment and her attraction to him. She said sorry, but I don't think she really meant it. I don't get why, so we just dropped it. Over the next few months, maybe 6 or 7, she messed up at least 5 times while watching a show or seeing him on social media. The first 2 times I called her out, she would say dumb stuff about Nolan's looks. But eventually, I stopped because I was tired of awkward talks. It got me thinking why she found it hard to not do things that disrespected me. I've messed up in the past with things she didn't like. I never made the same mistake twice, so it really started to bug me over time. I would get annoyed every time I saw a gap in the show, even though he was just a TV character. It's not like it's a big deal, right or wrong. There was a convention happening near us, and my wife found out about Nolan's meet and greet from his Instagram. She didn't ask me, just told me she was going and spent the next 2 weeks there. Before it happened, she was constantly gushing about it. At the time, I really liked her, but her obsession was starting to annoy me big time. I got so fed up that I just blurted out, I don't think it's a good idea for you to go if you're going to act so obsessed. She gave me a nasty look, but I stuck to my guns and said, I really don't think you should go. It's in a different city and you didn't even ask me before deciding. She didn't say anything and just stormed out of the room. Honestly, I was relieved when she left. I got it off my chest and let it go. I thought she got the point until the day of the meet and greet when I saw her wheeling her suitcase to the door. When I asked where she was going, she said she was off to another city for the meet and greet. My jaw probably hit the floor because I couldn't believe she was actually going through with it. I wrote down the route I'm taking with Sueya, a friend who cheated on her husband twice and he has no clue. We're gonna spend the day. Spending the night in a hotel so I don't have to come back late. I'll be back in the morning. Saying I was mad is an understatement. The whole situation was really touchy for me. But I had to let her go and deal with the consequences later. Looking back, it was a bad move, but I didn't want to physically stop her. I guess I had no other option. I should have tried harder to make her stay, but then I wouldn't have learned what I know now. The whole day went by. Yo, my wife barely hit me up, just sent me a quick text saying she made it to the bus station and then when she got to the other city. But then she ghosted me until the next day. I must have called her like 7 times throughout the day but she never picked up. It was freaking me out. We weren't exactly on good terms, but I still had this feeling she was in trouble in a city she wasn't familiar with. Ended up going full-on Instagram detective trying to track her down. Checking out the posts and nobody's updates, hoping to spot my wife. Finally saw her in one of the like 34 stories that were up, so I knew she made it to the convention safely. It relieved me a bit, but I was still pretty mad. 7 missed calls and she couldn't even bother to call back. Just another problem to add to the pile when she got home. As she had promised, the next morning I was awoken by the sound of the front door closing. My wife had returned from her trip. Man, all I wanted to do was go back to sleep, but there was a talk that needed to happen. She came upstairs and caught me chilling on the bed. I remember her forcing a fake smile as she shoved her suitcase into the corner. How was the meet and greet? Did you meet anyone? I tried to keep my tone neutral, but I know some sass slipped out. The meet and greet was cool, yeah. I did meet him and a few others from the show. It was nice to finally see these people in person. I'm glad you got to go. Man, we really needed that experience before. I was about to finish my sentence when she started crying, tears welling up in her eyes. I already knew, baby. I'm so sorry, I should have checked if you were okay with me going instead of just deciding on my own. That was totally unfair. I was pissed off with how things went earlier, which is why I didn't answer your calls. But seriously, I'm sorry. That night, Susie and I went to a bar and I left my phone behind, so I didn't even know you called. Honestly, I was caught off guard by her. Sorry about that, it was totally out of character for her. It was supposed to cheer me up, but something just didn't feel right. I decided to think about it later. I asked to see some of the photos she took, and she happily agreed. That's when I noticed a red flag. She turned the phone away from me as she was looking through the pictures. It was subtle, but I'm pretty sure it was on purpose. Only after she opened a picture did she show it to me. So, there was this girl smiling next to me, even though she was the one holding her phone and swiping through it. If you've got a Samsung Galaxy phone, you'll know that when you're in the gallery and scrolling through pictures, there's a little bar at the top of the screen with thumbnails of all the photos and videos in that folder. Well, I saw something there. It was tiny, but it looked like a big chunk of skin tone, like a section of a naked body. I don't think she realized that when she was showing me the photos. Man, that photo was confusing as heck. I couldn't even tell what I was looking at, but it definitely came after the convention stuff. I just let her keep showing me the pictures until she was done. Then I had to say the usual stuff like, no one looks good in these, and, I'm glad you met your favorite. I was just going through the motions, you know. After we were both finished, I told her to go take a shower and freshen up, and she actually agreed. As soon as I heard the water running, I grabbed her phone with a big smile and went straight to her gallery. There was one video at the very end of her gallery, and I played it right away. It started in a dimly lit room, kinda like a hotel room with cozy lights. There was someone close to the camera, and I could hear voices but didn't want her to hear, so I couldn't turn up the volume. The person near the camera seemed to be adjusting it, and once they got it stable, they moved away. It was me. So, my wife was but naked, just chillin' on the bed like she was waitin' for something. Then, out of nowhere, I start hearing voices getting clearer and this other naked person comes out of the bathroom. I didn't even need to see their face to know it wasn't right. They went over to my wife, hopped on the bed, and I had to cut the video off at 11 minutes. I couldn't watch any more, so I sent it to my phone, deleted any evidence, and got the heck out of there. Man, I was so messed up. I didn't even know where I was going, but my head was spinning and my heart was racing. I must have been staring at her for like 20 minutes before I finally decided to watch the video I took from her phone. Watching the whole thing was just awful for me. Is there anything worse than watching your wife getting it on with some actor you can't stand because she's so into him? Did she throw herself at him? Did he actually like her? I couldn't handle it, it was giving me a massive headache. Man, I was so messed up. I couldn't have done anything differently, and I just knew deep down that I had to end things with her. It's like, being cheated on sucks so bad, but it could have been anyone else and it wouldn't have hurt as much. That's when I decided I had to get some payback. So, I went back home, told her I needed to take a walk, and that's when I'm feeling sick to my stomach and trying my hardest to act like everything's cool. It's been a whole week since I found out about this, and she's been all cheerful and smiley whenever she's on her phone. I can't shake the feeling that she's chatting with Nolan or something. I'm starting to get paranoid and I'm sick of feeling this way. I want to make her feel the same pain I'm feeling right now, but I'm drawing a blank on what to do. I'd love to hear some sneaky ideas for revenge that I could actually pull off. Hey, feel free to send over any suggestions. By the way, now you know why she was so excited to go to the meet and greet. I guess she wasn't just there for autographs and selfies. Who would have thought conventions could be such good places to network for affairs outside of marriage? Nothing says revenge like hitting her where it hurts the most, her wallet. And just imagine the look on her face when she realized her little affair ended up costing her half of everything. Update: Hey everyone, it's been a few weeks since my last post. Hey, I've got some updates for you on what's been happening. I read all the comments on my original post and I gotta say thanks to everyone for helping me out. My head was a mess but I found some clarity. So, I'll fill you in on what went down. First off, I called a divorce lawyer. A buddy of mine went through a rough divorce but came out alright in the end, so he hooked me up with his guy. Okay, so back in the day, me and the lawyer started getting down to business. The first thing I did was give Susie a call. She's a good friend of mine, so I asked her to meet up and she was down. We ended up at a bar, and let me tell you, Susie is wild. Part of me wanted to hook up with her just to mess with my wife, but I knew it wasn't the right time, if it ever would be. The whole reason I met up with Susie was to see if she knew anything about what went down between my wife and that sleazy actor she hooked up with. Man, Susie can really put M back. As long as someone else is buying the shots, she won't stop talking. We had some drinks and shots, but she definitely had way more than me. We were just shooting the breeze before she got completely wasted. I mentioned that I was thinking of surprising my wife with a designer bag, and asked for a recommendation. She went on and on about Chanel and Hermes, but I don't remember any of the details because I was just trying to get her to remember. Once I saw how wasted she was, I realized. Man, I was so drunk that Susie spilled all the gossip to me. She confessed that she hooked up with that actor while she was wasted. Her eyes got all wide for a sec before she played it cool again. I was dying to know how it all went down, but she wouldn't spill. She just took another sip and started talking about how my wife was getting too flirty with some guy and even slipped him her number on a piece of paper. I mean, my wife is hot and as much as I can't stand her at the moment, I gotta admit she's a catch. She waited for a long time and nobody even texted her, just a hotel name and room number. Big shot actors probably wouldn't have been dumb enough to do that, but he's not a big deal in Hollywood. So, does he know about the tape she made? I had my suspicions. Maybe nobody knew my wife recorded it, and if he didn't, that could be a big deal. Susan was surprised that I knew so much, probably shocked that my wife confessed. But yeah, Man, my wife straight up admitted to me that she was watching porn on the DL with her friends. I was pissed she was basically becoming a porn star for them. But I had a plan to deal with her. I got all the info I needed from Susie, recorded the whole convo, and arranged for her to get a ride home. Hopefully she won't remember any of this in the morning. I was trying not to tip off my soon-to-be ex-wife too early, but the clock was ticking as I worked with my lawyer. I was like, yeah, let's do this. So a few days later, we were chilling watching Nolan's dumb show and I just dropped the bomb on my wife that I wanted a divorce. She legit almost choked on her soda, coughing and sputtering for like a whole minute. After she calmed down, she kept asking me if I was joking, but I was dead serious. I thought I was ready for this convo, but it was so awkward. I didn't want to spill all the tea just yet, but she kept grilling me and I had to just take it all. I was bawling my eyes out, so I stormed out of the house. She blew up my phone with 21 calls that night, but I didn't answer a single one. The next morning, I got the lawyer to serve her with divorce papers at her job. Needless to say, that was super awkward for her. Once I got confirmation, I headed back home because she would know the reason for the divorce. She came back home within 2 hours of being served, and when I saw her, it was obvious she had been crying for a while. She came up to me, dropped to her knees, and started bawling all over me, trying to say something. She was saying something, but it just came out as a bunch of loud mumbling. It was annoying. It went on for like 20 minutes. Every time I tried to push her away, she'd start wailing even louder. Finally, I had enough and told her firmly to go upstairs and pack her stuff. She kept crying and crying, but then I finally heard her apologizing and saying it was a mistake. I couldn't help but laugh at the mistake part and pushed her off my lap. She looked at me sadly from the floor, and I stood up and she left the room, and within a few hours she was all packed up and out of the house. It seems like she's going to crash at Susie's place, who probably won't spill any details about that night. My only option now is to finalize the divorce, as I still have one last trick up my sleeve. I just need everything to be officially over before I can pull it off. Hopefully I won't lose motivation for revenge, but we'll see. Calling up Susie for some gossip was a brilliant move by my friends. Man, getting drunk sure makes people spill all their secrets. Serving her those divorce papers was like serving a cold dish of revenge. I hope she had a good cry because now it's time for her to leave. Goodbye, lady, you've got one more surprise coming and I can't wait to see what it is. It feels like it's been forever, but it's only been a year. Anyway, I'm back with what should be the last update and it's gonna be good. Alright, so we finally got the divorce settled and let me tell you, it was a real pain in the ass. Lots of arguing, endless meetings, and just a shitload of stress. But hey, it's done now. I got a fork over some alimony, but luckily her cheating ass couldn't even deny it properly, and I had no trouble proving it. So at least the payments won't be too bad, and they won't last forever. Oh, and I also uncovered all of Susie's dirty secrets in the process, which was a nice little revenge bonus. My wife and I split a ton of money, but I managed to keep the house after a long and annoying battle. That was good enough for me. Once things were settled, that's when I was able to have some fun. I had been holding onto that video ever since I grabbed it from her phone. I mean, no one is safe from getting exposed, but he's still famous and Hollywood loves gossip. So, who did I reach out to first? TMZ. Yep, I let them know what I had for them, and I did a great job of keeping it anonymous, even though I was worried they might snitch. I'm not used to that tabloid drama, so I was being extra cautious. Once I proved I had the goods, I chatted with a tabloid journalist and even made a little money from it. It wasn't a ton, but it wasn't chump change either. I must have refreshed TMZ like 100 times, waiting for them to break the story. It didn't happen the same day, but it finally popped up on their website the next day. My favorite part was that they used the name I gave them. Everyone was dying to know who it was. Yo, so this chick who hooked up with Nolan was a total mystery, and everyone knew about the recording. I sent the article link to my ex-wife's email using a fake account I made for talking to TMZ. Now all I could do was wait to see how she'd react, since I had no clue what she was up to. But then she showed up at my old house out of nowhere. 2 days later, she went nuts and kept accusing me of something. She was convinced I did it and kept pressuring me to admit it. I pretended to be clueless, but I was exaggerating on purpose because I wanted her to know it wasn't just some random bad luck or karma coming back to bite her. I wanted her to know it was me. I could see the moment when she figured out I was messing with her. She suddenly lost it and tried to attack me, scratching and hitting me. I fell over from the force of her lunge, but it wasn't that strong. So, I was able to push her off of me, thank goodness, because a neighbor saw the whole thing go down. Her screaming caught his attention, and the cops showed up within minutes. Yeah, I decided to press charges, which felt pretty good. Most of her family lives out of state, and she and Susie had a falling out, so I hoped it would take her a while to find someone to bail her out. The assault charge was just the icing on the cake for me. I wasn't even planning on that happening. The real kicker was her going to court for unlawful surveillance that she recorded. So, this chick leaked some private stuff without his permission, even though she didn't actually do the leaking herself. The whole thing dragged on for ages because nobody wanted to claim damages for the damage it did to his career. Apparently, he got kicked off some kids' show because of it, which I thought was pretty funny. His fancy lawyers were way out of my wife's budget, but she took a bunch of my money anyway. At least I got a kick out of watching her blow it all. Man, that girl's actions really had me pumped every time I heard about what was going on with her case. Whether things were going her way or not, it was all good. One headline even called her a groupie, which was kinda funny. But basically, she ended up spending 2 months in jail and dishing out $11,000 in fines. In my opinion, she got off pretty easy. But hey, it's okay for me to feel a bit vengeful, right? Anyways, now that things have calmed down, she's locked up in jail and honestly, I feel pretty damn good about it. I'm satisfied, that's for sure. If you suspect your partner is cheating, just leave and don't even think about going back. And if you can get back at them, don't miss the opportunity. That's all from me, take care because not everyone is as lucky as Kim Kardashian. Now on to the next story. Jacob Kingston took a swig of whiskey before grabbing his tablet. His wife's text told him she'd be working late again, leaving him to fend for dinner on his own. Jacob, a man of routine, quickly came up with a plan for the unexpectedly free evening. He decided to enjoy a juicy cheeseburger, dive into a good book, and open a special bottle of whiskey he had been saving for this moment. As he savored the whiskey, he put away his tablet and thought about his situation. Over the past 6 months, Jacob's wife, Anda, had been working a lot of overtime. When they first got married, they agreed to split the bills and vacations equally, each depositing money into a joint account while keeping their own separate accounts. Amanda couldn't touch her personal savings, checking, or retirement accounts even if she wanted to. Her fixed salary meant she wasn't making any more money, even if she was putting in extra hours at work. Jacob had no clue how much overtime Amanda was raking in because they kept their accounts separate. They were putting way more money into their joint account than they needed, ending up with a big surplus. Before they tied the knot, Amanda was adamant about keeping their accounts separate, and Jacob was cool with it. When they met Jacob, his business was going through some tough times because of the slow economy. There were times when he decided not to pay himself, a situation that many business owners are familiar with. Instead, he prioritized paying his creditors over taking a paycheck for himself, even though money was tight. Jacob was determined not to lay off any employees and used his personal savings to keep job security intact. Every day was a struggle, with the business doors closing at the end of the day and the weight of debt hanging over him. Amanda, who worked as a staff accountant at the company, could see the stress and pressure Jacob was under. The Fortune 500 company didn't want anything to do with Jacob's business because they were worried it might go under during tough times. Jacob knew this and kept Amanda in the dark about their financial struggles by using his savings to cover any expenses. Even though it was tough at times, Jacob always made sure to contribute his share to their joint account, believing things would get better eventually. He didn't just survive, he thrived, inheriting 3 auto repair shops in the end. So, this dude took over his dad's shops and turned them into a booming chain of 12 spots in just a few years. He's aiming to grow to 20 soon. Even though he could be raking in the cash, Jacob decided to take a small paycheck and put most of the profits back into the business. Each spot has top-notch tire gear that can handle any size wheel, and they've got fancy diagnostic tools that can fix pretty much any car problem from North American, Asian, and European brands. Only thing they can't fix is French folks startin' to cause some drama in Jacob and Amanda's marriage, even though they were doing well in their careers. It's puttin' a damper on what should be the happiest time of their lives. This is Jacob's second marriage, 'cause his first wife died in a tragic way. She was the only woman close to him, 'cause his mom passed away when he was in middle school. It took Jacob a while to get over Rory's death. His dad had to bring in an acting manager at the store Jacob was running, so he could have some time to mourn. Jacob's old man had a heart attack and passed away, leaving behind a wife and kids he never thought he'd have. Jacob was in a dark place and probably wouldn't have bounced back if it wasn't for that tragic event. One night, on his way back home from work, Jacob got distracted by his thoughts about his family and the future. It was only when he saw the mechanic apprentice messing around with the car that he snapped back to reality. The apprentice ended up spilling hot antifreeze on Jacob's chest, and he had to rush to the ER. The waiting room was packed with all sorts of people, just like any other city. Jacob looked kinda rough, covered in some gross green stuff that smelled weird. He seemed chill though, just sitting in an empty seat minding his own business. Then this hot brunette with a cast on her leg came over and sat next to him. The vibe was tense as they both knew they were gonna be stuck together for a while. They started talking about their injuries. Turns out Amanda twisted her ankle on a run after work. They also shared bits and pieces about their lives, and instantly hit it off. Jacob asked Amanda out to dinner in a bold move, and she happily said yes. The sparks between them were obvious and they quickly became a couple. Amanda, who had been hurt by her ex-husband's emotional abuse and cheating, made it clear from the start that she had zero tolerance for infidelity. Despite this, their connection grew stronger and they ended up getting married 15 months after they first met. As Jacob sat there sipping his whiskey, he couldn't help but think about their marriage. The old joke popped into his head: "We've had a happy marriage for 5 minutes. So, we've been married for 6 years now." In the beginning, Jacob and Amanda were super happy together. They laughed, danced, and got all cozy with each other all the time. It seemed like nothing could tear them apart. But things got tough after Amanda finished her MBA and started working as an accountant at a big company. Jacob was all in, cheering her on and wanting nothing but the best for her. But then, as a senior VP retired and Amanda started eyeing. So Amanda thought she had a shot at moving up the ladder cause her boss was about to get promoted. She was all confident in herself and tried to show how keen she was for the job. But then Jacob started noticing something off about Amanda's behavior. Kendall, their director, started getting all short and snappy with Jacob, always nitpicking at everything he did. And Amanda, she started looking down on Jacob, treating him like he was just some lowly mechanic in her eyes. Their convos started getting real tense and shady. Jacob started getting pissed off at Amanda because she never showed him any respect and was always angry and frustrated. It got to the point where their marriage was toxic because of it. Amanda started avoiding him by working overtime, and whenever she was home, she was always on her phone texting nonstop. Jacob started hating Amanda's phone because she was always glued to it, ignoring him. She became super protective of her phone, always hiding her messages and laughing at them secretly. It was normal for her to sleep with her phone under her pillow. And then shit hit the fan. Amanda was always getting violent, man. She would start spewing out harsh words and insults whenever she got mad. But once she calmed down, she would apologize and make things right. When she directed her anger towards Jacob, she would feel so bad that it would lead to some great makeup sessions. But Jacob started noticing a troubling pattern: Amanda's tantrums were happening more often and getting more intense. The closeness they had that made her outbursts somewhat bearable was starting to fade. He was worried about the state of their relationship. A month ago, shit hit the fan. So, Amanda got all mad over some little stuff and went too far by slapping Jacob, which was totally out of character for both of them after 6 years of marriage. The slap hit Jacob hard and they were both shocked. Amanda quickly realized she messed up and started saying sorry and asking for forgiveness, but things were already looking bad. A week later things got even worse when Amanda chewed out Jacob for not changing the oil in her car, even though he tried to explain why. The car was supposed to have free oil changes for the first 3 years. Amanda got really mad and started insulting people because of her behavior. Jacob had enough and told Amanda he wasn't happy with her decision to buy an expensive and unreliable German car. He reminded her that it was her job to take care of the maintenance. Amanda got really mad and threw her coffee cup at Jacob, almost hitting him as he dodged it. Jacob was shocked by how aggressive she was. Jacob was totally confused when he looked at her cold, indifferent stare as she walked away without saying a word. He took a sip of his whiskey as he heard the garage door announcing Amanda's arrival. Quickly, he grabbed his phone and sent out a text and an email that he had already drafted. They were basically the same, just in case one didn't go through. Jacob always believed in having a backup plan, just like the lyrics of that Tennessee Ernie Ford song that was playing in his head. If you don't understand, then the other one will. As Amanda walked by the living room, she saw Jacob chilling in his recliner with a whiskey in hand. "I'm gonna change and then we gotta talk about some weird stuff on the joint account," Amanda declared, not even waiting for Jacob to reply before heading into the bedroom. A few minutes later, the sound of the shower could be heard. Both Jacob and Amanda had set up alerts on their banking app to let them know about any suspicious activity. Jacob noticed something weird going on. He got the same messages that were freaking Amanda out. So, he put down his iPad and grabbed a drink, waiting for Amanda to come back. 15 minutes later, Amanda walked out of the bedroom in black yoga pants and a white crop top, with her hair still wet from the shower. Even without makeup, she looked hot with her fit body catching Jacob's eye as she sat down on the couch across from him. "Have you heard about this stuff? Hey, what's with these deductions from our joint account?" Amanda questioned with a hint of disapproval, showing Jacob their bank statement on her phone. Earlier, it showed a balance of over $30,000, but now it's down to a measly $12. Jacob nodded in understanding. The $12,000 is a payment to PDC, Pendragon Security Consultants. I hired them to keep an eye on you for a month and gather evidence of your affair with your boss. And the $18,000? That's the retainer for Simone's Kennedy and Dixon, my divorce lawyer. Lawyer Jacob just sat there coolly, taking a swig of whiskey while watching Amanda's reaction. Tears started forming in Amanda's eyes, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to find the right words. Her face turned red with a mix of fear, sadness, and anger, leaving her speechless for a moment. Jacob saw how upset she was, watching her emotions change quickly. But it wasn't until he reached for his whiskey that Amanda seemed to gather herself and finally speak up. In the end, Amanda broke the silence and said something. Her words were desperate. "I just got caught up in it. I don't want a divorce now. Weren't you the one who said she has no tolerance for cheaters? What does that mean to you?" Jacob argued. "If you ever cheated on me, I would divorce you," Amanda replied, her hands clenched in her lap and her eyes fixed downward. "That sounds like a smart move," Jacob sarcastically commented. "I don't want to pressure you," Amanda repeated. "What did you think would happen when I found out?" Jacob pushed. "I didn't think you would find out," Amanda admitted. "She straight up told the truth, and I thought that would be the end of it so we could go back to normal. But what about the disrespect and anger? Was I just supposed to ignore that?" Jacob argued. "I never disrespected you, and there was no abuse," Amanda objected, her voice getting a bit louder in defense. "You were in our bed with him," Jacob said sternly. Amanda gasped, her face turning pale. "Yes, I confess, but I didn't mean to disrespect you," she said gently. "Well, that's just great, as long as you didn't mean to disrespect me. If you ask me, I think we can just forget about it," Jacob replied, his voice dripping with anger. "You slept with your lover in our bed, in her place, and you have no idea how much that hurt me. And you have the nerve to say there was no abuse." Jacob scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "You hit me and threw a coffee cup at my head, that's classic abuse. But hey, we can try to move past this." "I don't want a divorce," Amanda insisted, her voice filled with urgency. "We can go see a marriage counselor," she suggested. But Jacob just shook his head. "Our marriage wasn't the problem, your cheating was. Counseling is important but not to save our marriage. You need to deal with whatever issues are making you cheat. If your lover was available, you'd be out the door in a second. I'm not your second choice." "I don't want a divorce," Amanda said firmly. "You'll change your mind," Jacob observed. During their conversation, Amanda's phone kept buzzing with notifications, which she ignored in order to make her point to Jacob. Phone rang and she quickly grabbed it, making Jacob point to her phone saying, "You better answer that." He suggested Amanda Rose take the call as he got up from the couch and went to the bedroom for some privacy. While he was gone, Jacob took the opportunity to post on social media, typing away on his phone. Amanda's voice could be heard muffled at first, then followed by a loud exclamation. A few minutes later, Amanda stormed back into the living room, looking angry and furious. "You told his wife," she screamed. "So, you seriously messed up by trying to break up his marriage. That was so not okay, especially since they have 2 young kids. How could you be so heartless to her? You're a total jerk, a worthless piece of crap. I'll never forgive you for hurting her like that." Jacob watched Amanda with a mix of amusement and disbelief. "So let me get this straight, he's not a bad guy for cheating on his wife, but you're the awful one for telling her about it. Your logic is way off, babe. It seems like you and your boyfriend are the real worthless ones here. Seriously, I'm being called out for calling out all the lies and cheating in marriages, but now I'm the bad guy." Jacob just shook his head and chuckled. It's crazy to see how cheaters try to justify their actions, especially when it's your own wife. "This is between me and you, why did you have to stick your nose in their marriage?" Amanda's face turned red with anger. "Your lover had no problem getting involved in my marriage, so I had no problem getting involved in his if he's cheating. She's with a guy from work who's been with a bunch of other women. She needs to make sure she's safe and get tested for STDs. He's not trustworthy, he's probably dirty. Amanda got defensive right away, saying she always showers when she gets home late from work. I bet you're sleeping with him without using protection. You should get tested too. I did it for myself, even though we haven't done anything since you started cheating. Amanda looked over at her husband. Surprise, he knew about her cheating for months and had already planned how to deal with it, acting like everything was normal. Who is this guy she thought she knew? You just want revenge, you're pathetic, Amanda said angrily. Jacob couldn't help but hear her phone buzzing nonstop as she yelled at him. When she took a break, her phone started ringing. You should answer that call, Jacob suggested calmly. Taking another swig of whiskey, Amanda didn't say a word as she stomped off to the bedroom to answer her phone, leaving Jacob to do his own thing. Seeing his chance, Jacob quickly whipped out his iPhone and made a call, muttering into the receiver before setting up a recording app and strategically placing the phone against the lamp on the end table. He made sure the chat session would be captured on video, while also keeping the line open for the other party to hear. It didn't take long before Amanda came storming back into the living room, her face all twisted up. Why did you post that on Facebook? She yelled, her voice echoing in the room. You even tagged all my family and friends, and you tagged Pastor Derek. Jacob stayed calm, nodding in agreement. Yes, but I also shared it on LinkedIn so all your work connections could see it too. Amanda's anger boiled over, and she let out a loud scream before throwing her phone at Jacob. He closed his eyes, bracing for impact, but the crash was much worse than expected. He was this close to knocking him out cold when the phone smacked him in the forehead. Despite the shock, he kept his cool. He knew she was going to retaliate, and not responding to her was one of the toughest things he ever had to do. Amanda suddenly lunged at him, landing blows on Jacob's face. A punch to the nose made his vision blur for a moment. Finally, he couldn't hold back any longer and instinctively defended himself by hitting back with his arms as Amanda viciously attacked him while screaming. Jacob was getting real fed up with all the threats. He finally had enough and dragged her away, standing up to create some space between them using a love seat. He was silently hoping that the 911 operator he called would send help quickly. And just like he hoped, a cop car showed up a few minutes later, just like he imagined. Amanda was giving Jacob the evil eye, thinking of ways to get back at him. She was about to make a move when the doorbell rang and interrupted everything. Awkward silence, you should just get used to it. Jacob's voice was calm with no emotion. Amanda's nostrils flared and she narrowed her eyes as she stared at Jacob. Suddenly, she marched towards the front door and flung it open. Amanda came face to face with two cops, looking confused and angry as she argued with them. She kept shooting accusing looks at Jacob during the argument, but he couldn't hear what they were saying. Man, she was all fired up and pointing fingers, no doubt about it. Eventually, she moved out of the way so the cop could come into their house. One of them walked over to Jacob, saying something like, "I'm Patrolman Peter, and my partner is Patrolman Terry. Your wife said there was some violence tonight. Can you tell me what's going on?" "Did you hit her?" Patrolman Peter asked, shaking his head. Jacob denied it, saying, "I just asked my wife about her affair, and she attacked me," pointing out. "Man," she straight up threw her cell phone at his face and busted his lip. "I was the one who called 911 because she's been getting more and more violent lately. A month ago she smacked me, and then a week later she chucked a coffee cup at my head. It barely missed, but if it had hit me I would have ended up in the ER. I recorded tonight's argument, you want to check it out?" Peter's face changed, he was definitely interested in seeing the proof. Jacob finished up. Jacob tapped on his iPhone a bunch of times before passing it to Patrolman Peter. With a furrowed brow, the officer watched the video in silence. His expression changed as he saw Amanda being hostile towards Jacob. Turning back to Jacob, Patrolman Peter looked at him skeptically. It seemed like there was some chat before the recording. Did anything said make the situation worse? Jacob just shrugged and said, "She found out I hired a private investigator to follow her for a month, and then I told her affair partner's wife about the results. Needless to say, she wasn't happy." The cop laughed. "You don't mess around, do you? As they say, I light my path forward by the fires of the bridges blazing behind me." Jacob replied dryly, "Fair enough." Patrolman Peter shrugged, a smirk on his face, then turned to speak with his partner briefly. After evaluating the situation, they returned with a decision. "We're detaining your wife for domestic abuse and threats," Patrolman Peter informed Jacob. "I might have to get a restraining order because when Amanda was kicked out in handcuffs, she looked at Jacob with tears in her eyes, begging him passionately to help her. She was like, 'Jacob, please don't let them do this to me. If you ever cared about me, make them let me go. I'll behave, I promise.'" Jacob just rolled his eyes and took a business card from Patrolman Peter. The officer was like, "My email's on the card, send me the video." And as the squad car drove off, Jacob wasted no time calling his lawyer, Frank Simmons. "Everything went down just like we planned. She got arrested." Frank told Jacob to lock himself at home if the chick shows up again. The next morning, Amanda was ambushed by a blonde chick who didn't seem to give a damn as she chewed her gum. "Hey, excuse me," the blonde stopped Amanda in her tracks. "Are you Amanda Kingston?" Amanda, feeling weirded out, confirmed her identity. "Yeah, who are you?" "You've been served," the blonde said bluntly, shoving an envelope into Amanda's hands before walking away. "What the hell is this?" Amanda called out, annoyed. "I don't know, I don't care," the blonde said, her voice trailing off as she walked away. "But I would say you're probably screwed, whatever it is," frustrated Amanda muttered as she ripped open the envelope. Inside was a divorce petition. "What a bastard," she exclaimed, her anger overflowing as she turned to her parents for help. It had been a terrible morning for Amanda. She had been taken out of her jail cell early and brought to a holding facility in the courthouse, where she anxiously waited for an hour. Before meeting with her lawyer, she made a quick call to her parents the night before. They rushed to find legal help for her, and luckily they found a lawyer overnight. This gave Amanda some peace of mind as she prepared for her court hearing. The judge set Kendall's bond at $10,000, meaning she had to pay the full amount or use a bail bondsman and put up real property as collateral, paying 10% of the bond. On top of that, a restraining order was put in place, preventing her from contacting Kendall. Her lawyer had to set up plans for her to either see her spouse at his place or at work. The lawyer also had to figure out how she could get her stuff back from his place. At first, Amanda's lawyer didn't like these conditions, but changed their mind after seeing pictures of Amanda's husband leaving court. Amanda's parents took her to McDonald's drive-thru as soon as she got out of Denton County Jail, since it was too late for dinner and she had to get up early for court. So, Amanda totally skipped breakfast yesterday and even skipped dinner to chill in bed with her boss Paul. She thought she could grab some leftovers when she got home, but that plan got messed up. She was thinking about how she even ended up in this situation and then remembered when her night took a crazy turn. She was just hanging out with Paul, having a good time, when her phone buzzed and ruined the moment. She was hoping it was a text from Jacob, but instead, it was just a notification about her low bank balance. When she logged into the bank's app, she saw that their joint account was basically empty because of two huge withdrawals totaling $30,000. She tried Googling it, but didn't find anything. Amanda thought about what could have caused their checking account to be so low. It could be a scam or a problem with the bank, she thought, using her brain. But then she considered another possibility that she didn't really want to think about: maybe Jacob found out about her affair and took all the money in response. However, she found it hard to believe that he would do that, since she thought she knew her husband. Well, he wasn't one to back down from a fight. If he thought she was cheating, he would confront her directly. Jacob Kingston didn't ignore his suspicions, despite Amanda's reassurances. Amanda found herself in a crappy hotel room, lying next to her boss, grappling with doubts about the choices she had made. Things had always come easy to Amanda. She was used to being the smartest and most attractive girl in her class, but this often made her isolated from her classmates, who didn't trust her. From a young age, she knew how to use her looks to get what she wanted. In her teenage years, she ditched the high school boys for older, more successful guys with good jobs. College was basically a repeat of high school. If she struggled in class, she'd just hook up with her professors. She managed to graduate in 4 years with a finance degree. She thought about law school, but didn't think she was smart enough. Her affair with Paul Ramirez, the senior director, was the real deal. She said that the ring didn't mean anything to her, it was just a way to get what she wanted. She started cheating on her husband while she was working at Chase Bank in her second year there, when she met Anthony Cooper. Anthony was in charge of looking into some sketchy money stuff, but he seemed chill and that caught Amanda's attention. She asked him out for drinks and they ended up sleeping together after their first date. She was really into him and they moved in together within 2 months, and a year later. So, they got hitched and at first, Amanda was head over heels for Anthony. She was all about making him happy and they looked like the perfect couple. But, things started to go downhill after 4 years of marriage when they were trying to have kids. Anthony got this chance to do a 4-week training with alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Amanda knew it was a big deal for his career, so she encouraged him to go for it. The first week without him was tough. Amanda had Anthony under control at first, but by the second week, her loneliness got worse. Her hormones were all over the place, making her want Anthony even more. By the end of the 3rd week, Amanda was on the brink, and finally, in the 4th week, she gave in to her feelings and agreed to go out for drinks with Bob Collins. Bob used to be partners with Amanda's husband in the Denton County Sheriff's Department, but they had drifted apart from Anthony for some reason that Amanda couldn't figure out. She finally agreed to meet up with Bob for some drinks, thinking maybe they could work things out. Plus, Bob's charm and her own loneliness made the invite seem interesting. What's the harm, right? Meanwhile, Anthony was killing it in the ADF class, coming out on top as the star performer. As the last week rolled around, he had the chance to take the exam early. Passing meant he could leave early, but failing meant sticking around until the class was over. After his success, Anthony didn't waste any time in getting ready. Got a ticket to fly back home and surprise the wife. Arrived in the wee hours of the morning and got dropped off by a neighbor. Saw Bob's car in the driveway and freaked out a bit. Quietly went inside the dark house, left my bag by the door, and snuck towards the bedroom. The room was lit up by the bathroom light, so I took out my phone and started recording the sleeping couple. Managed to get 30 seconds of footage before taking a few photos. He quickly hid the phone and casually walked over to Bob's side of the bed. He playfully slapped Bob, causing him to scream loudly. The scream woke Amanda from her sleep, and she was scared and confused when she opened her eyes. She saw Bob crying and holding his cheek, with her husband standing nearby. It took a moment for her to understand what was happening, but then it all clicked into place. Amanda's expression changed from shock to panic as she realized the seriousness of the situation. Her soon-to-be. My ex-husband was pissed off and gave me an ultimatum. He said, "I'll be back at 3 to get my stuff, so you better be gone by then." His voice was full of anger and he warned me that if he caught me still there, he wouldn't be responsible for what he did. He said I wasn't worth risking his career or freedom. He grabbed Bob by the hair and made him look into his eyes as he insulted him, saying, "You're a piece of shit. I'll make sure your wife sees the footage. Your career and marriage are done." And then he delivered one final blow. Bob punched Anthony in the face, making his nose bleed. Anthony quickly ran out, leaving Amanda behind feeling devastated after finding out about her cheating. Amanda felt guilty and tried to make things right, but Anthony wouldn't budge and started divorce proceedings. Her parents tried to comfort her by blaming her husband, painting Anthony as the bad guy. Amanda portrayed herself as the victim, saying she bravely left a toxic relationship. Anthony was left to deal with the fallout. So Bob just made her story even more legit, solidifying her status as the main character of her own life. Amanda's drama at Angstrom's in Dallas totally wrecked the image she had been working so hard to maintain. When she came face to face with her ex-husband Anthony, she was hit with a wave of unexpected emotions. Anthony was with a hot chick, tall and fit with fiery red hair, who looked kinda familiar. Amanda's heart raced as she noticed the stroller next to them. "Hey Anthony," she said. "Hey there," Amanda's voice kinda shook as she said hi to him. Anthony replied with a cold tone, not a lot of warmth there. Amanda reached out her hand to the woman and said, "Hi, I'm Amanda. I used to be married to Anthony." "Yeah, I've heard about you," the woman, Melissa Parker, said as she shook Amanda's hand. Amanda felt a flush of embarrassment creep up her neck. "I'm sure you've heard some good things and some not so good things." Melissa responded in a similar way, saying, "I'm Melissa Parker, I'm Anthony's wife. And this is our son, Anthony Jr." Amanda looked down at the sleeping kid. Man, Amanda's heart was breaking when she saw that beautiful baby. "You're lucky to be married to Anthony, he's a good guy." Amanda tried to force a smile as she said goodbye to Anthony, but he just gave her a cold glare full of hate and no care, then quickly took Melissa and the baby and left her alone in the store. Days later, Amanda was watching the news and was shocked to see the woman she had met. "So, I was watching Anthony on TV the other day, looking all fancy as a news anchor. Then, Melissa Parker shows up and it all makes sense, she's the connection we've been missing." Amanda decides to do a little Google stalking and finds out that Melissa is making moves in the media world. Despite feeling a bit jealous, Amanda can't help but feel happy seeing her ex doing well, especially since they're kind of linked now that they're both in the same industry. Amanda's emotions are all over the place, you can see it in her tears. But in the midst of all the drama, a familiar story starts to unfold. Anthony is the one causing all this mess. Didn't he know his new marriage was bound to fail, right? So, with this comforting thought, Amanda held on to reality, thinking about what would happen after getting a divorce. After quickly scarfing down her Egg McMuffin, Amanda made her parents take her home, still determined to confront Jacob. She struggled with the chaos that was sure to come. "That's not a good idea, sweetie," her father warned. "I need to talk to Jacob, I need to tell him what happened." "We can figure this out," Amanda insisted. Her mother, Ken, stepped in with concern evident in her voice. "I don't think that's a good idea," the judge said. "I don't care what the judge said," Amanda snapped at her mother. "Just take me home." As they stood outside her front door, Amanda's impatience grew. She rang the doorbell, but there was no response. With each unanswered ring, her frustration increased, culminating in a bombardment of hammering on the door. Inside, Jacob made a brief call, keeping the security chain in place before opening the door. "You're not allowed to be here. There's a restraining order." "Stay the hell away from me," Jacob said firmly. "I live here," Amanda shot back. "How are we supposed to work on our marriage if I'm not here?" Jacob's shocked expression met Amanda's determined gaze. "I'm filing for divorce. We're not fixing anything. I'm not staying married to a lying, abusive cheater like you. You need to leave," he declared, the door standing firm against her protests. Angered, Amanda continued to pound on the door, hurling insults and threats. Her parents joined in, their voices echoing her pain, intensifying in the chaos as the door finally opened. "Open the damn door, Jacob, or I swear you're gonna get hurt," Amanda screamed. "Just open it, you idiot." Amanda's dad chimed in, his anger bubbling over. "I'll put you down, boy." Jacob took a sip of his coffee, looking both shocked and resigned as he watched the footage from his doorbell camera. The squad car pulling up, the officer approaching, and the awkward conversation with his wife and in-laws all played out like a crazy scene. In the video, Jacob opened the door as one of the officers rang the bell. "So, last night I opened the door for the cops after they checked my ID. They asked about the bruises on my face and I told them what happened. I caught my wife cheating, so I hired a PI and got proof. When I confronted her, she got violent and attacked me. I showed the cop the restraining order I filed against her. Once he got back home, he showed the cop the video he took on his phone of Amanda and her parents threatening him at his door. The cop watched the video with a shake of his head, clearly thinking the whole thing was ridiculous. Looks pretty straightforward to me. Give me a copy of that video, he said, handing Jacob his business card. Then he called for backup, expecting to make multiple arrests. Stay inside and watch the action on your phone. Don't leave your house unless I say so. Jacob, you got that shit, right? He knew shit was about to get real as he got ready to deal with his wife's crazy outburst. The cop called his buddy over to watch the video on Jacob's phone before they went up to Amanda and her folks. They got busted for trespassing and being a threat, with Amanda getting slapped with more charges for breaking the restraining order. And then 2 more people showed up. So, the cops rolled up and arrested Amanda and her folks. It was total mayhem. Amanda's mom got all worked up, Amanda started bawling and cussing out the cops, and her dad tried to step in but got taken down. It was pretty crazy, to say the least. Jacob didn't waste any time and called his lawyer right away, leaving a quick message saying Amanda and her parents were just taken in. Looks like I married into a bunch of idiots. Robert Klein was feeling defeated and sad as hell. So, basically, on Friday night, Robert, his wife, and their daughter got arrested for trespassing and threatening their son-in-law. They ended up spending the whole weekend in jail and had to wait until Monday for their court hearing. The judge then hit Robert and his wife with restraining orders, telling them to stay away from Jacob's house and job. Meanwhile, Amanda had her bail taken away for breaking the protection order and harassing Jacob, so she's stuck in jail for a while. Tough break for Robert and his fam. The wife was able to get them out, but Amanda stayed locked up for who knows how long. Robert couldn't stop feeling like he failed as a parent. His once beloved daughter, Amanda, turned into a spoiled and self-absorbed brat. But despite all that, she still had a special spot in his heart. Nicole, his wife, was locked up with Amanda and they had some sneaky chats. When Nichols finally got out of jail, it seemed like he had a new determination. Robert was totally confused about where this whole mess came from and what it was all about. He tried to get in touch with the lawyer who dealt with Amanda's last arrest, but of course, he was conveniently on vacation at the same time. Thinking it was a stroke of luck, Robert decided to look for another lawyer to help him out. After flipping through the yellow pages, he finally found a lawyer willing to meet with him soon. Little did he know that this quick decision would lead to even more trouble. Kenneth Campbell, the lawyer he found, didn't really fit the typical lawyer stereotype. With his skinny frame, receding hairline, and a face that looked like a bird of prey, Kenneth gave off a vibe of being opportunistic. Robert couldn't help but think of some random phrase from his old literature classes about looking hungry and skinny. While some lawyers used flashy TV commercials or billboards to advertise, Kenneth seemed like the type to offer his services in shadier places, maybe even on Fox News. As Robert handed him a business card from Amanda's divorce papers, Kenneth's predatory grin faded away. When Simmons, Kennedy, and Dixon mentioned this surprise development, Kenneth's face turned into a scowl, clearly annoyed. This made Robert wonder what he had gotten himself into. "So your son-in-law is more of a big shot than a mechanic?" Kenneth said skeptically. Robert nodded, "Exactly. He owns a whole bunch of car businesses, but he still gets his hands dirty." Kenneth held back from asking more questions and decided to do his own research. He quickly turned to his computer and Googled Jacob Kingston of Kingston Automotive. "Damn, we've hit the jackpot with this firm. They've got 12 successful locations and looking real good. Maybe my divorce settlement will be huge, and who knows, they might even cover my fees too," Kenneth thought to himself, eyes gleaming with excitement. He was practically drooling at the thought of a wealthy case. "Screw you," Kenneth muttered, glaring at his phone in shock after leaving a message for Jacob's lawyer, Frank Simmons, who had finally called him back. Kenneth urgently wanted to set up a meeting with Jacob Kingston and his legal team. "Let's talk about temporary alimony," Frank said shortly before hanging up the phone in a rage. Kenneth called Frank Simmons back, ready to give him a piece of his mind about professional respect in the legal industry. "What part of 'screw you' didn't you get?" Frank asked rudely without even saying hello. "If you want to play rough, we can play rough," Kenneth muttered to himself as he set his phone down on his desk. "Why didn't you tell me?" Kenneth's voice echoed through the room as he called out his clients. "I walked into that conference room feeling like a fool, but I finally got in touch with someone at Simmons, Kennedy and Dixon." Kenneth was met by a newbie associate who was in charge of setting up a first meeting. It was made clear that Kenneth's clients didn't have to come to this first meeting. The whole conference was a disaster for Kenneth, from the moment he walked into the law office to his quick exit. It was a mess. So, Kenneth Campbell thought he was all that when he waltzed into the reception area, but let me tell you, it was like the receptionist would have been more excited to see a random dog turn into a lawyer and walk in with a briefcase. They sent him to a tiny conference room and left him there to chill, promising someone would be with him soon. Poor guy sat there for what felt like forever, all thanks to Carol's rude message to wait. Finally, someone showed up to get him. To him, she looked like a teenager, but Kenneth thought she was just a kid and didn't take her seriously. Little did he know, Carol Dixon was in her 30s, a Yale law grad, and a junior partner at her firm thanks to her talent and family connections. Kenneth had no clue about her achievements and dismissed her at first sight. When he walked into the conference room, he was surprised to see Carol sitting in front of him. Her attitude completely changed. Kenneth went from being slightly amused to feeling more aggressive as he laid out what his client wanted. But then he was shocked and then bitter when Carol quickly tore apart his arguments. "She had proof of your daughter's violent behavior, breaking the restraining order, and even death threats from both you and your wife. And let's not forget about the prenup that you conveniently left out." Carol said all this calmly, leaving Kenneth feeling hurt and embarrassed. The whole situation was a real hit to his pride and ego. He couldn't hold back his frustration. "You've just made me look like a newbie, not a veteran lawyer with 30 years under my belt," he snapped with a determined tone. Carol then dropped the bomb, "I'm cutting ties with you. Find someone else to clean up your mess. Oh, and here's the bill for wasting my time. Now, get out of my office." With that, he stormed out, fuming with anger and embarrassment, finally realizing he had underestimated Carol Dixon to his own disadvantage. Meanwhile, Amanda and her parents were seated opposite Jacob in the conference room. Their faces were full of bitterness. Amanda had put a lot of effort into her outfit, hoping to show Jacob what he would be missing out on. But Jacob didn't seem to care, unfazed by her attempts to make him feel sorry about their upcoming divorce. The terms of the divorce were simple, there wasn't much to split up. They agreed to keep their own stuff that they had before they got married. Since Jacob had bought the house before they tied the knot, he would keep it. Amanda saw this as a sign that Jacob wasn't fully committed. On the other hand, some people thought it was a smart move to protect themselves from any future uncertainty. Looking back, both views had some truth to them. As part of the agreement, Jacob made sure to get back Amanda's wedding ring set, and in exchange he gave her his own ring. Amanda put both rings in an envelope and gave it to Jacob. He took off his ring and slid it over to her without saying a word. During the whole meeting, his ring just sat there, untouched, a quiet reminder of the finality of their decision. As they stood up, the weight of finality seemed to linger in the air for Jacob. Jacob couldn't help but ask Amanda the question that had been bothering him. "Why, Amanda? We had a good life together. I thought we loved each other. Why would you throw it all away for a fling?" Amanda looked unsure as she met Jacob's gaze. "I wish I had a straightforward answer for you. Maybe it was boredom, restlessness, ambition, or a mix of all three. What can I say? I regret betraying you. I regret the consequences, not the act itself. It's a part of who I am, but you were a good husband and I was just a good wife. Maybe I..." Jacob nodded, agreeing with her words, which confirmed his suspicions. Amanda gathered her stuff and was about to leave, but Jacob's voice made her freeze in her tracks. She turned back to him, meeting his gaze as he pointed to his wedding ring still on the table. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you liked this article, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about yourself or someone else, don't hesitate to do so. Feel free to hit me up if you need anything. Stay safe.